Hi, everyone. Welcome. Glad that you're here today. Today, we're going to be talking about the STAR method and how it can be used to answer really tough questions. I've got some specific examples for you as well, which I think are going to be really helpful. Now, hang out to the end of this video. I'm going to share some additional pearls of wisdom that'll help you make some small adjustments to answer your questions that I really do believe will have a big impact. So let's get rolling. What is a behavioral interview? A behavioral interview is a very popular interview technique that is simply meant to assess your candidacy based on past behavior. So instead of asking a hypothetical question like, how would you react under pressure at work? It would sound something more like, tell me about a time that you were under pressure at work and how did you handle it? The best way to identify one of these questions is how it starts. Tell me about a time when, or give me an example of a time when. The idea behind this is simply for you to map out the reaction that you had in that situation based on the result of a particular situation. Now, some additional example questions that you could anticipate in this type of environment would be, give me an example of how you set your goals. Tell me about a time when you had to be creative to overcome a problem. Give me an example of a time that you had to prioritize certain tasks or projects over another. Tell me about a time that you disagreed with a decision that was made. Tell me about a project that you've worked on that you're really proud of. Tell me about a time that you made a mistake and how did you handle it? Listen, I know that some of these questions can feel tricky to answer, but the STAR method is going to be the best way for you to organize your answer. So STAR stands for situation, task, action, and result. What's great about this is it's going to allow you to organize your story in a relevant and succinct way, but it's going to also allow you to identify your contributions and your results. And these are two elements that are really easy to forget in a high pressure environment. I've done it myself, we're only human, but this is going to allow you to be really organized in the way that you construct your answer. Now, the main goal here is to emphasize your strengths and just in detail. An interview is not the time to be modest about your accomplishments. Now, even if you feel like that's the natural way that you're being pulled, the best way to offset any sense of bragging is to simply back up your reaction with numbers and results. Those awards, endorsements, and accomplishments, they don't lie. So let's take a look at the STAR method, and I want to kind of go through it in detail with you so that you feel armed and ready to craft a detailed and compelling story. Situation. In explaining this situation, you're simply telling the interviewer when or where this event took place. Example, we were working on a 12-month contract for a high-value client when our agency was merged with another firm. Task. What was your role? Example, it was my role to lead the transition for my group while also communicating with our client to keep the project on track. Action. What were your specific contributions? Here, I would focus on what you personally contributed. An example would be, I set up weekly check-ins with the client to update them on the progress of the merger. This created an important level of trust between us. I also had regular one-on-ones with each person on the team, both to assess how they were handling the change and to make sure we would meet their deadlines. Results. Finally, what did you produce? An example would be, we ended up completing the project on time, met all the client's expectations. It was challenging at times, but it was an incredible learning experience for navigating change and succeeding under pressure. All right, so I know that was a lot to cover. If it feels like too much to remember, just simplify it down to this. Provide context, what you did, how you did it, and what was the end result. Here's another example. Tell me about a time when you faced a difficult problem at work. Situation. I was working as a sales associate at a bridal boutique, and a customer purchased a dress online and it had delivered to the store. On the morning she was due to come in for her fitting, I realized that one of the other associates accidentally put the dress out on the floor and another customer purchased it. Task. I knew I needed to make this right for the customer to meet my own service level standards and to uphold the reputation of the company. Action. Before calling the customer to let her know about the mistake, I located the same dress at another store nearby. I called the customer to let her know that there would be a delay and I had to reschedule her fitting. I let her know that the dress was being transferred to my location and that I would be waiving the alteration fees due to the delay. And when she arrived, I provided a gift card to thank her for understanding. Result. The customer was so thankful. She even wrote us a 5-star review on several bridal sites and sent us a picture of her in the dress from the wedding that we proudly displayed on the store. Now, if you are newer to the workforce and you can't necessarily think of a specific example that you can share, what I invite you to do is to maybe draw upon past internships, volunteer work that you've been a part of, or maybe even group projects in school. Absolutely acceptable to use these examples, and they work really well. The STAR method will work well for anyone, whether you are in a professional setting or you are drafting upon your collegiate or internship experience. So here's a hypothetical example. If you worked at, let's say, a high school newspaper and you wanted to use the STAR method to answer this question. Tell me about a time you found a creative solution to a problem. Situation: readership was down for my high school newspaper, the Daily Tribune. Task: now, as a senior and a new member of the social media team, my goal was to generate social content that would result in a 30% increase in traffic. Action: I partnered with student organizations at my school with large social media followings on Facebook and on Twitter to share links out to articles that would be relevant to their members. Result: as a result, I increased monthly traffic site visits by 35% and created a directory for the point of contact for all sponsored student organizations on campus that the social media team was then able to use to promote future stories. This answer is absolutely effective because it provides context to the problem, describes the individual actions taken, and it defines the impact of those actions. Can't go wrong with it. When it comes to using the STAR method, research and practice are going to be your keys to success. So here are some best practices that I want you to keep in mind. Review the job description in great detail. So pay attention to what's required, but also pay attention to what obstacles you may need to overcome. A great trick here is to come to the table with a story about an entire situation versus preparing for a singular question. It's nearly impossible to predict which interviewer is going to ask which question, but oftentimes they're very similar. So a great example of this would be if one interviewer asked you, tell me about a time that you were under pressure. And then another one asked you, well, tell me about a time that you handled stress. Technically, they're trying to get at the same thing. So if you just prepare a story that discusses how you've dealt with a tense situation, it's going to cover your ground beautifully. Now, if you are interested in anecdotes on where to draft some inspiration to create these stories, consider these. Think about a time you've showcased leadership or ownership. Think about a time you've overcome a technical problem. Maybe a time that you would have done something differently. Sometime you've overcome a personal conflict, when you've learned something new, or maybe you've owned a project outside of work. And I want you to practice these answers out loud. So this is going to help you prepare so that when you are sitting in that interview, you're going to feel more confident and composed when you're delivering your answers. And 2 to 3 minutes per story is great. And I want you to use I statements. So I know that this can sometimes feel a little bit uncomfortable, but in this situation, it's completely appropriate. I promise. Detail your impact. Speak positively and confidently. Filler words like like, they plague all of us. But there's a way for you to mitigate that. So slow down. And if you're talking about a project that you're proud of, convey your pride with joy. Tone of voice and nonverbal communication is always really powerful. And be specific. If you can't think of a specific example that you want to use or that you want to elaborate on, it's okay to talk about how you would potentially handle a situation. So if you're at a complete loss for words, and hey, I've been there, it totally happens, the best thing that you can do is just practice saying, that's a great question, let me give that some thought for a minute. It's a therapeutic pause, it's a powerful way to stay in control and let yourself construct a very composed answer. All right, there you have it. So to quickly recap, my top tips for using the STAR method to answer these behavioral interview questions include stick to the format. So situation, task, action, and result. I want you to prepare to address situations through stories, not just preparing for specific questions. I want you to speak positively and confidently using those I statements. I want you to practice answering those questions in about 2 to 3 minutes, and then practice makes perfect. So dedicate at least a half hour to performing those mock interview questions, and you should be golden. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you found this information helpful and that you're able to apply it to your interview preparation. If you're interested in seeing more examples of how to use the STAR method or how to answer these behavioral-based questions, click on this link up here. It'll route you back to our career guide, which is our main repository for all of this information. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, please like and subscribe to this channel and make sure you hit that notification bell to stay updated. And then of course, if you want to connect with us on social media, we would love to be able to be available to answer questions for you or just simply connect. But outside of that, thank you for allowing me to be a part of your journey today. I'm wishing you the best of luck in your interviews, and I'll see you next time.